Your apartment building might be owned by a company you've never heard of, and that's by design. When you pay rent each month, that check doesn't always go to a local landlord anymore. It flows to a corporation listed on the stock exchange. Real estate investment trusts REIT own roughly 1 in 5 rental apartments in America. They control office towers, shopping malls, warehouses, but most people don't know they exist. So what exactly are they, and why do they matter to your wallet? A REIT is basically a legal wrapper. It's a company that buys real estate, apartments, offices, warehouses, and rents them out. Then it sells shares to regular people, just like any stock. You can own a piece of it through your brokerage account. The catch: REIT must distribute at least 90% of their profits to shareholders as dividends. That's the law. So what does that structure actually mean for how buildings get managed? Here's where it gets interesting. Because REIT have to pay out nearly all profits, they're incentivized to maximize income. That means raising rents when leases renew, minimizing maintenance costs, and buying up properties in high-demand areas. They operate like any business, efficiency first. That's different from a mom-and-pop landlord who might accept lower returns for stability or community ties. So what happens when these massive, profit-driven entities become the dominant player in a neighborhood? The housing market starts to behave like a financial asset class, not a shelter market. Prices rise faster because REIT compete with each other to buy properties in desirable locations. They use leverage, borrowed money, to amplify returns. A single REIT might own tens of thousands of units across multiple cities. That scale creates efficiency. It also creates concentration. When one player controls that much inventory, rent trends ripple across entire regions. But is that good or bad? The data shows mixed outcomes. REIT brought professional management and capital to residential real estate. They maintain buildings to standards and rarely disappear overnight. Tenants get consistency, but they also brought financialization. Rents in REIT-heavy markets tend to track returns on capital, not local wage growth. A neighborhood can become unaffordable faster when ownership is optimized for investor returns rather than community stability. So how did REIT become so dominant in the first place? REIT existed since the 1960s, but they exploded after the 2008 financial crisis. When banks stopped lending and house prices crashed, institutional investors needed safe places to park capital. Real estate looked attractive. The government encouraged it too. Tax incentives and deregulation opened doors. Between 2012 and 2022, REIT ownership of residential properties nearly doubled. Cheap borrowing costs made it easy to buy. Then interest rates rose. What changed? Higher interest rates made borrowing expensive. Suddenly the math broke. REIT couldn't leverage as aggressively. Some slowed acquisitions, but they didn't sell. They held inventory and raised rents to maintain dividend payouts. That's the structural pressure baked in. REIT can't simply reduce income without disappointing shareholders. So what does this mean for future housing affordability? The answer depends on policy and market cycles. If rates stay high and demand softens, REIT might compete on price. If rates fall and capital floods back in, consolidation continues and rents climb. Either way, they're not going anywhere. REIT now represent a permanent structural layer in housing markets. They've also inspired similar models globally. So the question isn't whether they'll exist, it's whether policymakers will shape how they operate. Some cities have taxed vacant REIT holdings. Others have capped rent increases or required local approval for large-scale purchases. These are attempts to balance the efficiency REIT bring against the concentration risks they create. There's no settled answer yet. The housing market is still learning how to coexist with investor-owned real estate at scale. That's the real story, not whether REIT are good or bad, but how we collectively decide to regulate them. Your rent check's destination matters because it shapes incentives. Money flowing to a REIT shareholder in another state creates different pressures than money staying with a local owner. Neither is inherently wrong, but they're not the same. Understanding that difference, understanding how REIT work, why they exist, and what they optimize for, is the foundation for any conversation about housing affordability. And that conversation is happening right now, in city halls and legislatures across the country. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe to explore more forces reshaping where we live and what it costs. There's a new story about urban economics every week. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.